This is Support is Sexy, episode 17, with relationship and life coach Phyla Antwine. Welcome to the Support is Sexy podcast. I'm your host, Elaine Fluker, entrepreneur, author, producer, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I talk to women entrepreneurs who share their journeys and the true stories of their wins and their lessons, and give you insight and inspiration to take your business and your life to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so happy to have you here because, as you know, it just would not be the same without you. So today we have someone very special to me. She is actually family, someone I've known since she was a little girl and I was a little girl too. Her name is Phyla Antwine, and Phyla is the founder of a relationship and life coaching business where she empowers and instructs women on how to practice self-care, something that we all need, how to heal from hurtful experiences of our past, and how to have loving and healthy relationships. She's also the author of 2 books, Strengthening Her Essence and the children's book, Curiously Coiled. And she's been an expert on television and in outlets like the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, and MSN.com. I am certainly proud of her for those accomplishments, but also because she is using her own past experiences to help her clients and the women that she serves. Those experiences being enduring sexual abuse as a child and abandonment. And in this episode, she goes into the experiences, but also how she moved through them, what she did, what kind of new promises she made to herself moving forward, becoming a young woman and an adult, and again, how she reincorporated all of that into the work that she does today. So this is really a great episode when you're looking at how to bring your lived experiences to your business or to your work. Some of the things that you'll learn in this episode are the importance of having spiritual stamina, why you must develop a healing practice of your own, knowing when to stop. I thought this was very important. Knowing when to stop and shut everything down and take care of yourself. How to determine if you need to adjust your messaging of your program or how you're reaching out to clients. And then something beautiful that Phyla shared about why you are the sun. And if you're not okay, the universe suffers. So you definitely want to listen out for that. A lot of great information in here. Know you're going to love it. So without further ado, Miss Phyla Antwine. So Phyla, thank you so much for joining us on an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. Support is definitely sexy. And so I really just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to support you and ask that you support me too, right?
Yes, of course. So I have to ask you the question I ask everyone to start out. When did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
I think I fell in love with entrepreneurship at a really, really young age. I was always kind of like the bossy little girl who got on everyone's nerves. And my parents afforded me a certain amount of personal freedom growing up. So I was allowed to speak up. I was allowed to try new things. And I was just kind of always that young girl who wanted to do things differently, who wanted to do things on their own, who wanted to try things. And I never really liked being told what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember at maybe about 7 or 8, I had a conversation with my mom and one of her best friends. And I asked them, like, why do you guys go to work for someone else? I didn't know at the time, like, what I was really asking. But now as an adult, that's one of the conversations that sticks out because I just couldn't fathom, like, I can't wait to be an adult so I can do what I want.
Right.
And you guys are adults and you're doing what someone else is making you do. Like, why would you do that?
Right.
And that kind of started my whole fascination with entrepreneurship.
It's like the whole thing now that's going on with getting young girls to embrace being bossy. We were always told not to be bossy when we were younger. Now it's like, be bossy.
Yes.
It's okay to be the boss.
Exactly.
I love that. Now tell folks what Phyla was like as a child. You told us a little bit there, but what were you like? What was growing up like?
I was really sassy, opinionated. I've always had a level head, but sometimes I can get a little bit cheeky, a little bit arrogant. And so as a child, before you have life experiences that sort of tame you, I was very much self-assured and empowered and just had a really strong personality and kind of knew what I wanted and how I was going to get there. Like there, I sometimes have to tap back into that young girl
Mm-hmm.
because she was so powerful and so fearless and so just like willing to go after what she wanted.
It's so funny. I tell people that now. I feel like for me, I had to have to tap back into the girl of my 20s when I just was so sure about what I wanted. I mean, it wasn't a business at that time, it was a job, but I don't know if I didn't have the same fears or I just didn't even stop to think about it. But I would go after
Yeah.
them in a way that now I might still go after it, but it takes a lot more personal convincing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And for me, it's that very young version of myself.
Mm-hmm. So strange. As we get older, you would think you maybe for some people it is the reverse. As you get older, you become more uh, easy. It becomes easier to tap into that part of yourself as opposed to the reverse. I guess it just depends on what your experiences are.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know what? I think we kind of go through like the highs and the lows based on our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
But then at some point, you get to a balanced position where you aren't as self-assured, but you have the ability to tap back into those parts of your life when you need to. Because we do need some level of restrictions.
Right.
But we become so confined as we get older, like I said, because of certain experiences. And then you get to this point as you get older where you can kind of decide which places in your life to pull from for whatever you need to do at that moment.
Right. Now, you've been very open about things that you experienced as a child, things like abandonment and other kinds of trauma. Can you tell us about some of those things and how it plays into the work that you do today?
Sure, sure. Well, I come from a really great support system, first of all. I have a large family, and both my maternal and paternal families were extremely close during the earlier part of my childhood. Um, so I come from a really strong foundation of like love and support and all of that. When I was about 10 or 11, things started to shift as far as the family structure. And my dad didn't leave the home physically and actually until I was about 15,
Mm-hmm.
but he was absent for most of those years, for most of my formative years, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in and out. There was a lot of adultery and deceit and things like that with my parents. So there were issues. And then when I was 11, from the ages of about 11 to 13, I was also sexually abused.
Mm.
And so that experience was, of course, the most traumatic thing that's ever happened because it was at the hands of someone I trusted, an adult figure. So it completely changes the chemistry of the way that your brain works, right?
Right.
It confuses all the ideas and thoughts and lessons that you've been given. It creates an insecurity as far as your sexuality. And again, like I said, I was always very free, very liberated, very
Right.
empowered. And so that experience completely and totally like blew the lid off of my reality.
Mm-hmm. Especially because it was
But
someone you trusted.
absolutely, absolutely. And so you're taught certain things, right? And these things are facts to you as a child because you don't know anything else. And then something happens that changes the way you see the world, the way you see other people, and the way you see yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to come back from that and I had to work through that. Now, because I did have the support system of family and love, I was able to maintain some semblance of sanity because there were times when I've never had like suicidal thoughts, never felt suicidal, but there were definitely times in those experiences that I wanted to not be here.
Mm.
And so having the support system allowed me to find something to hold on to and to fight through that and work through that. And of course, that's what shaped my work, my passion, you know, my purpose for living and working with women in its entirety.
Now, how did you move through especially the abuse and the abandonment? Was it, of course, you, as you mentioned, you had that support network there, but did you also go to therapy, or was the abuse, for example, something that was ongoing, or did it happen and then you were able to sort of put your life back together or figure things out?
Well, it was ongoing for about a period of maybe 2 years.
Mm.
And I didn't tell my mom, I didn't share until I was about 17.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a period of, let's say, maybe 7 years that I kept this to myself. And as I said, the structure was changing within the family. So there were a lot of things happening. And I felt like I was strong enough to handle this on my own because I didn't want to add to the pressures that were going on or the mounting things that were occurring.
Right.
So I kind of just held on to that for that period and, threw myself into school, threw myself into like activities. I was a cheerleader in high school. I was like adamant about going away to school.
Right.
So that was one of the things that kept me going. Like as soon as I graduate, I'm out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And I held on to that. And I kind of just withdrew into myself in some ways as well. So there's that sort of polar dynamic where I thrusted myself into certain things, right, to distract myself. And then I also hid inside when it came to other things. And I really just dealt with it on my own for those few years. Looking back, I don't even understand how I was able to handle that at 12, 13, 14, 15.
It's
but,
amazing
I
how
know
resilient children can be.
Absolutely, absolutely. They are really powerful. And so I just kind of clung to the principles that were taught to me from the very beginning. And I used that to kind of just be a ledge to stand on within that time period.
When you finally did share what happened, did it relieve for you any kind of weight, or was it something that it just felt like it was time for you to tell what had happened to you?
It felt like it was time, but I also had started to like have an attitude problem. I was angry. I was snarky. And so my mom, recognized that there was something going on. What's going on? And so we eventually talked about it, but there was this tug for a long time. And it led up to
in other ways.
Absolutely. In other relationships, in other situations. And when I did tell, I literally felt a physical weight come up off of me. It's one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had because people say, oh, I felt a weight lift, but I'm 17. And so I just told and I felt the release at that moment. Like emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and physically, I felt the release. And at that moment, I made a promise to myself not to ever keep harmful secrets again.
So it changed your life in that way to allow you to be more open moving forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, people joke now and they're like, but did you die?
Right.
Like whatever the experience was, like you went through all of that, you came out of it, you told, and look at you, like you're okay.
Right.
Everyone else is okay. No one fell apart. No one lost it to the extent that they couldn't come back. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I have to just live in my truth and live in my space. And everyone around me is going to have to deal with that.
Now, how does that, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate
absolutely.
that. Yeah. How does your past experience play into your work now as a life and relationship coach, your overall experience?
Well, I think it gives me an insight. So, we study and we're schooled and we learn, but you have to live certain things in order to really be able to connect with another person on that level. So it definitely gives me a real life experience, and it gives me a certain perspective to be able to see things from that position. But it definitely fueled my desire to want to impart my insight on other women because I come from that dysfunctional place, but I've managed to learn how to create healthy relationships that don't drudge up all of that negativity into my present. And I realized that there were a lot of women who don't know how to do that.
Right.
And who are continually bringing their baggage in. And so it was just important for me to share what I knew and to use that in any way that I could to gift it to others.
Now, when you were younger, I know you said you did what you knew how to do at that time. But since then, have you done any other kind of work, whether it's therapy or spiritual work or anything like that, to help you continue to move on past other things that have happened? Or maybe you have already moved on, but just to continue to get stronger as you move forward?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think you ever move past these things. We move through them, right? And you carry it with you for the rest of your life, but you have to have some sort of healing practice that you institute so that you can manage and balance. So I've worked with therapists. I've worked with coaches. I've done my own personal spiritual work. I read. I try to stay consistent in having a healing process, a wellness plan on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, because I don't think you can move through these types of experiences without seeking some sort of external help and without having a personal internal journey to get through it as well.
What do
So
you
yes, girl, I've done it all.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. That's why I wanted to express to people too, to be able to see just what you did, because it's a lived experience, as we say, right?
Mhm.
So you've actually gone through it. You're not just speaking from the perspective of a doctor who's saying this is what you should do, or someone else who's just saying this is what you should do without having experienced it. So I think people will get something out of whether they're going through it or they know someone, of knowing, okay, well, this is what this person tried or what they went through and what they did in order to try to heal.
Yes,
Yeah, of
definitely.
course, there's a lot more that goes into it, but just wanted to get a sense from you, just what you did, what you decided to do, because it's a lot to take on as a child, and everything sort of sound like it happened within a span of years, all at
Hmm.
once, and trying to figure that out. So, thank you again for sharing that. So,
Oh, of course.
yeah, what do you advise for the women you know who come to you, your clients or otherwise, who talk about issues of abandonment, or more specifically, daddy issues, as we call them?
Oh, yes, the daddy daughter dilemma. I love
Yeah.
that topic. But when we're first coming into anyone's presence, we have to sort of tread lightly because you have to get a feel for who each woman is and where they're coming from. But the first thing that I do with any woman I'm working with is just to reassure her that whatever has happened negatively to her is not her fault, right? Because I think that that is one of the things that we carry with us. And we don't understand that we haven't necessarily done anything wrong. So it's really a major component of my work just to help women sort of take off that layer of guilt, that layer of shame, and recognize that you haven't done anything wrong. Life happens, bad experiences happen. The best that we can do is learn from that, right? And
Hmm.
move through it positively. But we have to move through it without the guilt, without the shame. And so I just try to make it a point to be very specific and very diligent in letting women know that it's not their fault, whatever has happened.
Is that something that a lot of women you see struggle with in getting through that? It's my fault, or something that I've done to make this happen.
Oh, definitely. And not just when it comes to sexual abuse, when it comes to any failure relating to relationships,
Hmm.
women tend to take on the burden of that failure. I either could have done something differently, or I didn't do enough, or I should have done, or I should have been someone else. We
Hmm.
begin to compare ourselves. And I think it's part of just growing up in a misogynistic society
Right.
where we always feel less empowered to some degree. So if something goes wrong, it must have been my fault because I'm not empowered enough to say I had enough and I moved on,
Right.
or this just wasn't the ideal situation for me anymore. So we take on so much guilt and so much shame. And I see it repeatedly over and over and over and over, stemming back to the things that happened to us in childhood. We hold on to some level of guilt in some way, and then we take that into our new relationships.
And I think I could talk about this forever. I think for a lot of us, too, there's a little bit of fear there sometimes, of just, if I let whatever this is go, just speaking from a relationship in general, certainly not from a sexual abuse standpoint, but nothing else will come along, or this is the best that I can get, which also often stems from something in the past, right? Some feeling of unworthiness or just fear.
No, I agree. I agree completely. And I understand because sometimes when you look out in the world and
I
you see
mean,
what's there, it's like,
listen,
hey,
maybe it's
do I
not so
really want
bad.
that? Right. Exactly.
So tell us
But
about
we're human.
We're human, exactly. Tell us about the daddy, what did you call it? Daddy daughter dilemma?
That's what
Yes. What is that?
So,
And
okay, so really quickly, right? Briefly, directly, the daddy daughter dilemma says that if you don't deal with your daddy issues, you're going to end up dating your daddy issues.
mm,
And the themes are going to reoccur and repeat until you do the work and you deal with it and you work towards some level of resolution.
now, how do I know if I have daddy issues?
I think we all have some level of daddy issues, right? But it's just to what severity.
Mm-hmm.
Like for some of us, like you because I've seen the things that you say about your great and wonderful parents who've been married for like 1700 years. And it's so
Exactly.
beautiful.
Since Christ was born, yes.
Exactly. So some of us who come from like really great dads who were wonderful fathers and good husbands and showed us this stability, who are now dating in a world where others don't necessarily value that type of stability. We have these issues because we know that that exists. We've seen it in our own lives. But then it's such a challenge for us to get it that we sometimes begin to question whether or not we're worthy of it, right? Or whether or not it is going to exist in life for us. And then on the flip side of that, you have women whose fathers did create other issues, negative issues because of abandonment, because of abuse, because of those things. So on some level of another, we all have a certain amount of daddy issues. It's just like I said, the severity and how do you work through that. And based on which issues you come from, there are different paths to working through that and finding resolution.
I think that's so powerful what you said, because it's funny with my dad having been in my life, as you know, for, since the beginning, and my parents have been married 170,000 years, but there's still that part in me. My quote unquote daddy issue is I look up to my dad so much. And when I was younger, I always, I was a very sensitive child. I'm sensitive. I always wanted his approval. It mattered to me that I disappointed him, or if I disappointed him, and that kind of thing. But as I've gotten older in relationships, there's that part of me that truly wants approval. Like looking for the guy to be the one who approves of whatever I'm doing, or don't want to disappoint, or going out of your way to make sure that they're comfortable. And of course, there's that's part of that is part of a relationship. But that, I would say, is my quote unquote daddy issue. And if it doesn't work, then it goes back to this feeling of unworthiness. Like I didn't live up to whatever the standard is that I've made up in my head that the other person doesn't even know about. Is that a daddy issue?
Right.
It is, right?
That is a daddy issue.
Okay,
yeah.
I accept that.
Yeah, not that daddy did anything wrong,
right.
But you have a huge ideal to live up to.
Right.
But I think it's important for women like you who come from that space to understand that as a child, like looking at our parents, we don't know all the ins and outs.
Exactly.
Right? And we miss that sometimes. Like it was perfect in your eyes, but they're real people who had real issues. They just did a good job in nurturing their children in the midst of that, so you didn't get caught up in the conflict.
Right. It's so true. And plus, depending on what part of your parents' life that you came along, like I came along, my parents were much older, so they were much more stable. They had more money. Things were different. Whereas my brothers and sisters, who are much older than I am, things were different. It was just a totally different experience. They're like, I don't know what not that they don't think our parents are great, but they're like, you just have a different interpretation. Let's just leave it at that.
Right. You missed the ratchet mom and dad.
Exactly. I missed the ratchet or the struggling and living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. I'm like, but what do you mean? We had a great house in Long Island. They're like, okay, girl, whatever. So anyway.
Exactly.
So for your business, what made you decide? We've talked about all of your experience, of course, but in deciding that, okay, I'm going to be a relationship coach. This is how I'm going to set up my business, or that's a part of your business, but overall, what made you decide to do something like this?
Well, I've always been the one since childhood, like I said, who had an opinion,
right.
Even when people didn't want it.
Right.
And so there came a point in my life where I was very unhappy with my career and I felt unfulfilled, and I had started having children. So when you have a child, or when you have someone to take care of that's in your charge, it changes your perspective and the way you see things. So for me, it was really like, what is the legacy that I want to leave my kids, right? I'm not happy going into work every day. I'm crying on Sunday nights because of the anxiety, the stress. I'm having panic attacks going into work. I don't want my children to inherit any of this, because even if they don't see it, they're going to take it on in some way. So I decided that I was going to do something that was more purposeful. And I took some time to really work with therapists and work with coaches and figure out what was the thing that I was naturally gifted at, and how could I use that to impart some sort of positivity on the world, not to be so like puppies and roses.
I'm all
and
for it, all for the woo-woo.
But, how can I help heal myself and heal others and heal the world? And it took a certain level of spiritual stamina to get to that point. But I realized that this was part of my gift, and that I needed to transmute the negative energy from that experience that I had into something positive and empowering. And
Mm.
that's what led me on the path.
I
And,
love
I'm like, we got to live and we got to eat. So how can we
right.
make money?
Exactly. And then there's that too. It needs to be a business.
Right.
Now, how
Right.
important was it to be? I love spiritual stamina. I'm just writing that down. How important was it to have other people there to talk to sort of consult you in figuring out what your magic, so to speak, was?
It was imperative in having any level of success because we're all good at something. And you can be the best at what you're good at, but then there are going to be other places where there are holes. So I know that I have this gift of speech, so to say, or this writing ability. But no one's going to hear me if I don't know how to craft my message. And so maybe I don't really know how to market this and I don't really know how to present it to other people.
Mm.
So let me talk to someone, work with someone, hire someone who can help me do that. Because it has to be holistic if it's going to be successful in any way.
Right.
And then of course, no woman is an island and you can't do everything on your own because you will burn out, break down, fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's extremely important to always recruit others to help me, to always put my ego aside and ask for help, and to always make sure that I have a support system that can help guide me to the next level because I can only get myself to so far.
Right. Love that. Support is sexy. Yay.
Yes, it is. It's sexy.
Was now another part of your message is about the importance of self care. And why is that a part of loving yourself?
Well, self-preservation is the golden rule, right? If you don't preserve yourself, there won't be anything left to go around. I use this analogy a lot it's funny, I tell clients, but sometimes I forget, but that you're the sun in your universe, in your galaxy. You're the sun. And everyone and everything else in your life are the planets rotating around you. So you provide the light, you provide the warmth, you provide the energy, you provide the life to everything that's going on around you as everything rotates. And so if you're at the center of it all and you burn out, everything else is going to wither. The plants won't grow, the food won't grow, the flowers won't blossom, the trees will die, there won't be oxygen. So all of these things will happen if you as the sun don't take care of yourself. And I think I use that because, it's just such magnitude when we think of it in that sense. And it helps to put things back into perspective. So if you aren't taking care of yourself, you're going to burn out. And everything and everyone that depends on you is going to feel the consequence of your burnout. And we don't want that.
That is
so we have to preserve.
No, that's a great analogy. Totally. I'm going to try to remember that. No, I'm not going to try.
Yes.
I'm going to remember that. That is a good one. Now, in December 2015, you were quoted in a New York Post article saying you were sick for a long time at working and finally decided to quit your job after finding out that you had IBS and all these experiences, I guess, from the stress, I would imagine. Tell us about that decision and why it was important for you. Decision to leave, I should say.
Sure. So for me, like Beyonce says, a winner doesn't quit on themselves, right? It was really challenging for me because at one point I felt like I was quitting something. And that was really difficult. But my health was also suffering.
And that something was a job at the time?
Yes, that something was the job at the time. And, we attach so much to what we do and how well we do it. The third question that people ask you, if it's not the first, is what do you do?
Right.
And so it's attached to who you are in so many ways. And I just had a lot of anxiety around letting go. But again, my health was suffering. I started to have panic attacks. I was having like high levels of anxiety just getting through the day. And I said, IBS is like one of those things where doctors don't really know what's going on exactly. So it's this really like general categorization of we know that you're somewhere in this square. Something's not right, but we don't know why. And I think because I'm really sensitive, like you said, you're very sensitive. So my emotions are attached to my health.
Right.
And when I'm not emotionally healthy, it shows and it manifests itself physically. And it had been happening for so long that I said, all right, it was time for something to change. And when I realized that the something was that job, I said, it's time to go. I have to go. I have to make the decision. I have to choose me.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it boiled down to, choosing me. And so I talked to my husband for about a year before I actually did it.
Oh, wow.
And, because I didn't want to just be like, you know what?
I
I'm
quit my
done.
job today. Right.
But when I did it, I again felt that release that I felt when I was 17 years old and I shared my secret. And so there was like a connection, another
Mm.
thing that had lifted off of me. And it was the right decision. I knew it was the right decision.
Now, when you talked to your husband, Jason, right?
Yes,
When you
Jason.
talked to your husband about it, was he, what was the conversation like when you said, I think this is making me sick, or was it just, I'm ready to move on and do something else?
Well, it started, like I said, about a year in advance. And I said, I have to figure something out because this is not what I want to do. This is not the life I want. And Jason is very practical. So he doesn't often speak unless he actually has something to say.
Mm-hmm.
So he would just listen. And then I remember we were planning our wedding. And so I had like maybe 3 weeks off from work.
Mm-hmm.
Blew my whole entire mind. Like, wow. Because I was so used to feeling sick and feeling so crazy
You noticed a
that,
difference?
oh my God, like by like the fourth day, there was such a huge difference because now I'm away from the stress for a few days and I have 2.5 more weeks ahead of me.
Right.
And in the midst of 2 weeks, I realized that it was really taking a toll. So I sat with him and had a real conversation and I said, babe, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not exactly sure what I want to do, where I want to go, but by this time next year, I don't want to be here anymore. And he said, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And like that was it. And subsequently, we had a few more conversations that were similar to that. And he was just kind of like, well, I'll do my best to give you the time that you need to figure it out.
Right.
And that
That is beautiful. Now, how important is it to
is.
have a partner who supports you in that way, whether it be husband or whoever it is, and to have those, and to be brave enough, honestly, to have those conversations, because some people may have just continued for their partner, or that I don't want to disappoint that person, or I don't want them to feel like they have to take care of me, or whatever these stories that we tell ourselves. How important was it for you to have that conversation and to have that support?
Well, transparency is like number one on my list. Like I told you, I made a vow not to keep secrets, right? Especially
Mm-hmm.
not to keep secrets that could potentially harm you, kill you. So I'm very transparent, sometimes too much so. I tell him myself, but it was really important for me to let him know what I was feeling and what was happening because I didn't want it to come to a day where I was like, you know what, I can't take this and I'm gone. And he have no idea
Right.
how we got to that point. But I want to also stress, right, sort of the privilege of having someone to support you in that position because it is brave to say, you know what, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to let this hurt me anymore. But had I not had someone else there, I don't know if I would have had the privilege to actually leave because you do have to eat and you have to pay bills and provide for your children and your family. So I wouldn't advise anyone to just like quit cold turkey and all that. We have to have a plan in place. We have to work toward the next step, but you must take care of your health and listen to your body if it's telling you that this is not the right situation for you.
Mm-hmm.
I know that was a little off topic of your question. I'm sorry, but
No,
I want
that's
to make sure
great.
I say.
I'm glad you said that because there's so much out there now telling people to just, and maybe it was always out there, but I feel like it's becoming a fever pitch of just quit your job, do what you love, find your passion. And there's something to that, but there's also something to that comes with a lot of stress if you don't have a way to take care of yourself, or not even just stress on yourself, speaking from experience, stress on your business or this passion or this thing that you love to be the thing that takes care of you. And then I think you can start making decisions from a place of, well, I need it to work, or maybe I'll just change it into such and such, again speaking from experience, so that it'll make me money and do this thing. But then it ends up being a different kind of stress, because for me it's like, well, if I go that route, then I'm stressed about my business not being what I want it to be. So as you said, you have to have the balance and sort of think about, how am I going to make this work if you don't have someone there to support you during that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I agree. There is a lot of like job shaming going on
Yeah.
lately,
Job shaming. That's what it is. Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Job shaming. Nothing wrong
yeah,
with the
like
job. Nothing wrong with too
not at all.
figuring out how to make your job work for you. I think that's something people don't talk about a lot either. Again, it's this fever pitch around entrepreneurship, which I love. But even within your job, there's a way to be, as they call it, intrapreneurial, right? There might be something you can offer that brings your skills to the job, or it could just be the work, and then you go out and you do the things you love. So it comes in a lot of ways. Thank you for introducing that. As you can see, I'm very passionate about it, but it's so true.
No, likewise, I totally understand. Yeah, it's important to talk about too.
Yeah. So tell us about Black Married and Happy since we started talking about your husband. What is that all about?
So, Black Married and Happy is just an extension of my life and my reality, and my goal to showcase, right, the power of healthy relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the Black community, over the course of the last, let's say, maybe 3 years, I felt like there was such emphasis on the depravity and the degradation and the oppression and all of the things that are real to people of color, but it can bog you down, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it can seem like this is all that Black life is about. And even when it comes to Black love, we have reality shows that show us all this dysfunction, and we have all these media stories of Black men not loving Black women and Black women being angry and all these things. And I just looked at my own life and some of the relationships around me and said, that's not true.
Right.
It's not true for everyone. It's not true for everything. And it would really be cool to just kind of let people see that there's an alternative, right? That there are people who are Black, who are married, and who are happy in the midst of that,
Right.
right?
Right. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. So I decided, what better way to do it than to create this virtual space, which is, it started out as kind of like just a blog for me to share and have some pictures of the family and talk about us. And then it morphed into a community where I now have like other couples that we showcase, and we talk about some celebrity couples who you might not even know have been married for so long because the media doesn't focus on them, mainstream media,
Right.
because of course there's a narrative that, like you always say, we need to change the narrative.
Right.
And this is just part of me changing the narrative and giving people a different vantage point.
Now, how has it been putting your family sort of quote unquote out there to say this is an example of Black married and happy, and having your children be a part of it and all of that? Did you have any hesitation about that?
Um, to be quite honest, there was a teeny bit of hesitation, right? Only because growing up, I was always, and this might be a little off topic, but growing up, I was often asked, "Are you mixed?
Mm.
Where are your parents from? Oh, are you Black, but are you fully Black?"
Mm.
So I would fall into this sort of ambiguous category sometimes, like, "Oh, you could be XYZ." And so then I married my husband, and he's sort of ambiguous looking to some people. And then we have these children who are like, "Wow, okay."
Right.
Right. And so that was the only hesitation that I had, because here I am coming from this very self-loving place of being Black, of
Right.
being of African descent, of having a very specific message. And I did get a little bit of well, maybe it's because you know what I mean?
Mm.
Maybe it's because you aren't typical, or your family doesn't look typical. And so I had some hesitation. But I fought through those demons, and I said, you know what? This is my experience. This is my
Right.
reality. This is my life. And it still deserves to be showcased. And
Right.
people still need to see it. And so that's that. But other than that, the response, the feedback, everything has been positive. See, so those were my own demons. It
Yeah.
was no one else.
And that's the thing. It plays our demons come back, as we mentioned earlier, and then also, there might be those people who say that, and it's just sort of like you have to stick to what your vision is for the thing that you wanted to do and what you wanted to create, and what your intention was for your family and for the message that you're trying to put out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that's the case
Yeah.
with so much of what we do. I mean, now this is totally off topic, but even thinking about the speech that actor Jesse Williams gave at the
You
BET.
just read my mind.
Right? When you were talking,
Yes.
that's what I was. It's the same kind of thing. Like it's tough sometimes for people to receive the message from, depending on what the person looks like or getting caught up in what the person looks like. And it's like, but did you hear the message and where the
Right.
message was said? At least that was my opinion. We can anyway. People can Google that. So, but I definitely understand. So one of the
Yes.
quotes that you said was, "Together we are living the life that works for us and creating new visions for it along the way." And you were talking about your relationship. I think I read that on your site, Black Married and Happy. So, what is your
Yes.
vision for your relationship with yourself at this stage of your life? I know you were talking about you and your husband there, but what's your vision for your relationship with yourself?
Well, for me personally, I pour into others a lot, just naturally. I'm a Cancer.
You're a water
I grew up
sign like me.
exactly. I grew up in a family full of really nurturing, serving women. My grandmother on my mother's side had 11 children and worked in a hospital nursery in Brooklyn for 30 years, and she fed the entire neighborhood.
Mm.
So I come from this legacy of giving to others, and that's fantastic and that's great. But what I am also realizing is that that can be a very depleting lifestyle. And, as women, we don't always feel that it's okay for us to say no sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So as I'm growing into adulthood, as I'm growing into womanhood, I'm learning that I have to take better care of myself, that I have to exemplify the ideals and the principles that I'm sharing with others,
Mm-hmm.
and that I have to be empowered enough in my relationship with myself to sometimes be a little selfish. And that's been a journey for me, but I'm getting there. I'm getting
Mm-hmm.
there.
And what has having a business, what has it taught you about yourself as a woman?
Oh my goodness, that I am so much stronger than I ever thought I was, right? That I'm so much more resilient than I ever realized I
Mm-hmm.
was. And that sometimes I am more vulnerable just in the grand scheme of things, more vulnerable to certain illnesses, certain ailments. So it's sort of opened my eyes to my own mortality,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of crazy, right? Because business is business, but because in entrepreneurship, you're giving everything that you have,
Right.
right? Especially when initially you're a solopreneur, you're giving everything from everywhere for yourself, building this thing. And so I see my strength and I see my resiliency and I see all of that, but I also see that I am vulnerable, right? And there are times when I have to acknowledge my humanity and I have to allow myself to break and to relax
Mm-hmm.
and to stop, because we think that we can do everything. We want to do everything. We're these strong women, right? Capable, and I can do it and I can prove you wrong and I can do all this. But there are times when circumstances are bigger than you and bigger than what you can do. And so it's really taught me that I have to focus on my self care and I have to pace myself as well so that I can continue to be strong and all of those things.
Right. And do all the things that you want to do. Now, is there anything that you
Yes.
wish someone had told you about setting up the type of business that you have, in particular, being a relationship and life coach? Or are there any things that you've learned along the way that you say, okay, if I had known that, I would have done that? Nah, I guess not even phrasing it that way, because then it sounds like a regret. Just anything that you, here's a better way to phrase it. Are there any things that you would want to tell someone else who'd want to set up a business like yours now, being a life and relationship coach?
Well, I work with women and I specifically focus on African American women and women of color because I
Mm-hmm.
think we have a different level of trauma in our relationships. So it would have been nice if someone would have prepared me for our stubbornness,
Now,
just to
stubbornness to
say
accept the advice, or stubbornness in what ways?
stubbornness into, and I think, yeah, to accept the advice, right? And to really look at the role that we play sometimes in our
Mm,
situations. Even if it's saying, I'm not taking care of myself, whatever it is. Like we have been conditioned to be so strong that one of the most difficult things to do is to get a brown or black woman to look at herself and recognize her weaknesses in any way or shape. So if someone would have just said, okay, sister, listen, let me just prepare you, right? That would have alleviated, I think, a lot of stress and strain, because you're like, you're trying to figure out, where am I going wrong? Because you're giving people what they're asking you for, what they're paying you for, and then they don't want to accept it. So it takes some time, and it took some sort of reconfiguring of my program to get it the right way and word it the right way and introduce it the right way, and now we're much better. But I admire strength. I definitely do. But sometimes it's like, girl, just listen.
Are you hearing me? I think you said so much in there from a personal standpoint and from the business side, especially of listening to your customer or your client, so to speak, and reworking your package. If you've decided, okay, this is the group you want to work with, reworking your package or your offering so that it's more palatable, for lack of a better word, to them, so they can digest it in a way that they need to, because it's about really delivering the service is what your goal is. So how did you, in what ways did you reshape what you offered? Was it the type of packages, or was it, like you said, more specifically the wording and how you phrase what you were offering?
In some ways it was the verbiage, and for the most part, though, I think it was just the approach. Like you said something earlier when you were talking about your parents. You grew up on the lawn in Long Island, and your older siblings grew up in the one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn.
Right.
So there are different perspectives. And so I think I was coming from the green grass, Long Island perspective and trying to feed the roses and the rainbows, and coming from this very positive position, which is how I feel in my own life. But everyone is not going to be open to that, because some people are actually apprehensive at that because they've never seen that.
Right.
So I had to learn how to be more straightforward, and to be a bit harsher sometimes in my verbiage and in my approach. Like, some people don't like you to sugarcoat and can't even digest things that are sugar-coated. So I had to be very upfront, and I had to learn how to use my authentic voice in the midst of that, because I didn't want to lose myself, right? I didn't want to lose the message, and the message is that you can work through all of these things and really get to this rosy place.
Right.
But if you've never seen this rosy place, if you've never visited it, if you don't know anyone who has ever been there, it really doesn't exist to you. So I had to change the way that I introduce things to people. I had to sort of maybe elongate the process so that we didn't jump right into certain things, and so that I could ease people in. And I had to change some of the verbiage as well, because I want to reach these women.
Right. The goal
I don't want
to
now
change
them. My customer.
Right.
Right. I didn't want to go to where it might be more guaranteed, because these people understand what I'm saying and where I'm coming from. So it took some time to rework the actual work, to rework the wording, to rework the approach, and then to get to sort of a sweeter spot in that.
I love that. When I used to work with Susan Taylor at Essence years and years ago, one of the things she used to always tell us is meet the reader where they are. So it was like, you're trying to take them to whatever level or introduce them to whatever this fabulous thing is you're sharing with them, but where are they right now? You have to meet them where they are. So that's what it sounds like with your clients. Meet them where they are and then take them along the journey.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. So what does your support network look like overall in your business and in your personal life? We've talked a little bit about that, but what does it look like and how is it important to you?
Well, I have my husband, of course, who is the calm to my chaos, I guess. I'm a water sign. I'm led by my emotions, right? How I feel is what's real, right? This is what I feel like this is. So this is real.
Right.
And then 2 minutes later, I might feel differently.
Right. You'd be like, that was 2 weeks ago.
Exactly. And so my husband is really, really stable. He's like, I don't know how to explain it other than to say he's like just a structure. And he is not easily persuaded. He's not easily manipulated. He's not extremely emotional either. So his decisions are very practical. So he is the person I usually go to first, just to chat, just to spill out whatever's going on in my head. And he's always there to support me, but he always challenges me too.
Mm-hmm.
No one else challenges me that way. So nobody else upsets me the way that he does either.
Right.
Right. And in those moments, I may not always feel like he's right, but once I get a few moments, I understand where it's coming from. So to have someone who loves you, but who isn't afraid to challenge you is a really powerful thing, because now they're going to be honest with you, honest in a way that other people aren't capable of being. I also have two very best friends who we've been friends for over 20 years,
mm-hmm.
who are brutally honest as well, and who love me in such an honest way, and who don't sugarcoat, and who are there. Business wise, they're part of the team as well. Like, you go to your best girlfriends to recruit them.
Right.
You don't always know that it's going to last, but they've been a part of the team for so long. I have my mom who watches the kids, and when we need to go away for speaking events and when I need to do things, she's always there. And I have really amassed this community of women that I don't even know, many of them, from some of the work that I've done from the book, etc. And so there's this like virtual community of women who are in my inbox, who are in my DM, who email me. And I don't know if they really understand the support that they give me,
mm-hmm.
but that is, it's an immeasurable force, because there are times when you just don't have the energy, and I'll get a message.
Yeah.
I'll get an email. And it really feeds. So I think I have a great support system. I have a really large support system, and I have a support system that sort of transcends this space and this time and geography and all of that. And if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be able to keep going and continue on a daily basis. It's vital to my wellness. It's vital to my business. It's vital to my longevity.
Right. Now, where can people find you? Of course, I'm going to have links and everything, but is it best to go to your website, PhylaAntwine.com?
Yes, absolutely. That's the easiest place to kind of get everything. It's PhylaAntwine.com. And that's Phyla, Fila, Antwine, ANTWINE.com. And of course, on social media, I am She is Phyla across all platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, because, that's the way of the world, and that's how we communicate now.
Exactly.
So I'm easily found in any of those spaces.
I love it. So just a couple more questions. Thank you so much for your time.
I enjoy it.
Yeah. What's next for you? What are you most excited about today?
Well, I am taking a break, which is really the thing that most challenged me lately and is most exciting to me now. So I realize that I do have to listen to those whispers sometimes that are telling you to slow down, that are telling you to stop. And so I've committed to a certain level of self-care over the course of the next few months. So I'm excited about that. And in that space, I'm actually going to continue working on my next book, which is The Daddy-Daughter Dilemma, which I'm excited about.
Oh, my goodness. So am I. Include the girls like me who have the daddies who just don't even realize they have the dilemma.
Absolutely. The Superman daddies.
The Superman daddies, exactly. And your other two books, I know, Strengthening Her Essence.
Yeah, and Curiously Coiled.
And Curiously Coiled, which is I'm going to link to those two, which is a children's book.
It is a children's book. And I'm not a children's book author, really. But I did Strengthening Her Essence, A Woman's Guide to Liberation Through Truth. And so it's just a space where I decided to sort of put all of my principles as far as the coaching is concerned in a really summarized version. But what I found out, Elaine, is that so many of us, right, should have gotten some of these jewels 15 years ago,
right,
20 years ago,
right,
because it would have set us up a certain way. And so I created Curiously Coiled as a foundation for young girls to get that same pouring of self-love and the same ideas that I give to my adult women, but in a space that they could understand, from a position that they could understand. So I met those children where they were, just to kind of give a little bit of something right now to instill in them, to kind of guide them as they're growing and have a point of reference for that at that age.
I love that. Now, your past couple of books were self-published. Well, we can have a whole other show about that whole process. But why was it important for you to get the work out Not right away. I know it still takes time, but to go ahead and do it yourself.
Well, I know there's a book that I'm sure you're aware of, but we live in an age and a space where the gatekeepers are gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of the process of self-publishing was empowering to me because I felt like I have control over what I say and how I say it and how it gets put out. And so I think it was just an overall process of regaining my independence, regaining my self-awareness and empowerment. And I wanted that to be part of the process. And I wanted to make sure that I had creative liberty throughout.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want anyone to come in and say, well, let's change this, let's tweak this, let's,
Use
do this.
cover, or blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. Use this cover. And I got a lot of that still. You should change the cover a
Right.
little and make it a little bit more. And it was just like, no, like this is who I am, what I want to say, what I have to say, and it needs to be as authentic as possible. And self-publishing allowed me that to maintain that authenticity throughout the process.
I love it. So just a couple more questions. If you could think over your life and career and you had a chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would it be and what would you say?
It would have to be my maternal grandmother, for who I'm named after, because there was something almost magical about her. It's really weird because as an adult, you lose some of like the magic of your childhood. But for me, that relationship was the most important relationship in my life. And my mom and I are really, really close.
Mm-hmm.
But my mom was also really close to my grandmother. So she helped shape all of us. But my grandmother used to work 12-hour shifts and then come home and cook huge meals for us. And I would sit in the kitchen with her while she cooked. And she would just talk to me about her upbringing and growing up and all of these things. And the way that she poured into me is the same way that she poured into her food and her family and everything else. And so she's impacted me in a way that I didn't even realize was going to happen now. And I think that I would just say to her, I got it. I got it. What you were trying to do, I understand. What you were giving me, I get it now. I see that. And she never told us that she loved us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think she ever said, I love you, but you felt it in everything that she did. And so she impacted me so tremendously that I try to take a little bit of that with me in every interaction I have with someone, because I realize how powerful that is, right? For someone to feel like you really care and you're coming from this special place. So I get a little like worked up and emotional about her. But I was just sitting in the kitchen like a little chubby girl licking cake batter off the spoon.
Right.
But she was preparing me for who I am right now and for who I'm going to become. And so realizing that, having that realization as an adult now is mind blowing. And I would really just want to let her know that I got it, because she's not here to see who I've grown into. And I would want to make sure that she's at peace and she knows that it wasn't for naught.
I love that. That's beautiful. I would think, especially having a daughter yourself now, that it's really, really something special.
It is. It is, because, I just understand what a woman is supposed to do from a different space now. And I have a son as well, but it's different. It's really different because it's a part of yourself. It's like a physical extension of you when you have a child of the same gender, because all of the experiences that you have, they're prone to have similar experiences. So it pulls you in a different way. And I'm just so grateful that my grandmother was in my life and that I have a part of that and a part of her to impart on my own daughter.
Right. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So
yes.
Final question, how can we support you? What can we do? We gave out the website. Like I said, I'll have all the links, but is there anything you want folks to know about in ways that we can support you?
Well, of course, support is sexy, right?
Yes.
So we want to make sure that we are just supporting each other on a daily basis. Of course, I have the books. I have Curiously Coiled. I have Strengthening Her Essence, A Woman's Guide to Liberation Through Truth, which is a bestseller and 5-star rated on Amazon.
Woo!
So I would love for anyone interested to go ahead and buy the book and just take that in and be open to what it has to offer, because it's really a powerful little piece of work. It's something that I sometimes have to like pinch myself and realize that it came through me and not from me, because I think that's important. It didn't come from me. It came through me.
Through me.
It came through me. And I'm really grateful to have been a vessel for that. And so I would love for everyone to go ahead and support the book and buy it. And it's available on Amazon, of course, and it's available on my website at fileantoine.com.
I love it. So what's a parting piece of advice you have for us before you go?
Well, I think that there are some common mistakes that we make in relationships. There are some pitfalls that we fall into and all of those things. But what I would say to anyone, which I think can relate to any situation, is not to stay too long in whatever it is. If it's not helping you to heal, if it's not feeding your soul, if it's not helping you get to your next level, if it's not contributing to your overall health, wellness, don't stay too long at the job, at the relationship, in the business, in the friendship, whatever it is. Do not stay longer than you need to stay. Don't stay long enough for it to make you sick. Don't stay long enough for it to break you down. So whatever it is that we're doing, that we have going on, just don't stay too long. And I think too long is different for everyone, but we each know what our too long is.
Right. Phyla Antoine, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Hold on just one sec, okay?
Sure.
All right. Thank you so much for listening to that episode of the Support is Sexy podcast. And I do hope that you got some inspiration from it. And the challenge is for you to do at least one thing. Take one thing from the episode, at least one thing. You can always do more, but at least one thing that'll help you move one step closer to your dream. Whether that's launching a business, writing a book, whatever that thing is that you want to do, take something from this episode and move one step closer. And what I'll also ask of you, if you can tell me what you think about the episodes, what we've been doing, what you want to hear, what you like, what you experience while you're listening, go over to iTunes, leave us a review, and let me know what's going on. What are you thinking? What are you feeling about the show? What else can I do to be of service to you, which is what this is all about, to be of support to you. That's our buzzword, right? You can also go to my website, ElaineFluker.com/podcast. So that's ELAYNEFLUKER.com/podcast. Hear more episodes there. Also have a bunch of great videos, tons of information. It's where I'm going to be spending a lot of time, and it's where I love to connect with you. So again, thank you so much for listening. I truly appreciate you and your support. And the most important thing I want you to remember is having it all does not mean doing it all alone. So now, go out there and create something sexy, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.